Hi, I'm Jim Heffernan. I have really enjoyed recording these cello suites. In fact, I've enjoyed recording them so much that I wanted to take an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges I encountered in working up this music. The first thing is that the clarinet was not around in the Baroque era, so we don't have any clarinet music by Bach. We're not as accustomed to playing this kind of music as, say, an oboe player would be. And so I'm finding that ornamentations and certain other kinds of notations are very new to me. The other thing that makes it quite unique is that, well, it's string music. And we're not string players. So we're looking at things like double stops, for instance, that we can't play on the clarinet. And so I found these challenges to be unique, and I had to come up with some very creative ways to overcome them, and I wanted to share them with you. The first is the way the Baroque music lays out phrasing-wise. Bach, in all of these pieces, uses a lot of 16th notes, running 16th notes, even in the beautiful slow movements, 16th notes. And I think you'll find if you're looking at Vivaldi or Allemande or any of those other composers, they do the same thing. Well, if we play the music so that the 16th notes, when they're grouped in groups of fours, which they are, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, if we play them with the accent on the first note all the time, the music sounds very blocky and stodgy. So what I found is that the first note should always feel like it's the last note of the previous group. Then 2, 3, and 4, or 1 E and a, 1 here, you see. So the second note always goes to the first note of the next group. So we really don't get, in this case it would be 3 E and a, 1 E and a 2. What we get is 3 E and a 1, E and a 2. Those next notes always moving forward to the next beat really makes the music flow much more beautifully. I'm going to play it both ways just so you can get an idea of the difference. Okay, I will exaggerate a little. I admit this is a little over the top, but I want you to get the idea. Okay, a little exaggerated, but I want you to get the idea. Now this time, I'm going to make the second, third, and fourth 16th note always go across to the first 16th note of the next group. And you see, it's much more flowing and beautiful. I think no matter what Baroque music you play, but particularly if you try to play these cello suites, that's going to come in very handy and very helpful in your musical phrasing. Another thing I should mention before I go on is that if you're going to do this, you have to listen to cello players. There are so many fine cello players out there who have recorded these pieces. You can't begin to understand the pieces or see how to interpret some of the special things without listening to a cello player. Listen to violinists, listen to cello players. I'll recommend one for you. Yo-Yo Ma's recordings are very beautiful. I know that he's done them more than once, and the set that I have used, I believe, is a more recent set where he takes a fair amount of liberty with the music, and I think it's very beautiful. The next problem I encountered was double stops. Now, double stops are very difficult for us because we can only play one note at a time. And a cellist or a violinist can play multiple notes at a time, much like a guitar player. So how do we overcome this and still make it musical? Well, I have found that in listening to cello recordings over and over and over, there's a couple categories of double stops. The first would be phrase beginning and cadential. They happen at the beginning of a phrase or at the end of a phrase. And the second category would be melodic. Now I've discovered that the cadential ones, the phrase beginning and phrase ending ones, are played one note at a time and played very heavily and very rapidly. However, the ones that are melodic they're the ones that are played at the same time as the note in the melody. So you'll have a note underneath the melodic note, and that note is being sounded simultaneously with the top note, and we can't do that. So what I try to do is I try to take that particular double stop and play the bottom note like a grace note, as lightly and quickly and softly as possible, so as not to interrupt the melodic line and still leave sort of the ghost of a sound for that double stop that should exist there. So here we have, in my music, you can see I have what's called the phrase beginning one, and these notes are all rolled. And then this is a phrase ending one. This is a phrase beginning one, and this is a phrase ending one. However, as we move along, this is melodic. It happens right in the middle of the melody. And as we move along, we have one here and we have one here. My markers sort of cross that out a little bit, but you can see that little grace note. It's even marked like a grace note. So we have to play it like a grace note lightly and as much of a ghost as we can do it. This is the Allemande from the second suite, and I'm going to play through these first couple of lines so you get the idea of how the different grace notes sound, or double stops. So I hope you can see the difference between the cadential ones, which were rolled very heavily, and the melodic ones, which were very light. I'm going to record the rest of these cello suites, and I think I'm going to take an opportunity at the end of each one to talk a little bit about the special problems. And hopefully, if you play these pieces, you'll find this helpful. I think they're terrific pieces to study, terrific pieces for the clarinet player to advance their technique and musical understanding. Thanks.